Well, the immigration figures made for great reading, didn't they? David Cameron, no ifs, no buts. Just for you, the gullible, to vote for him. No ifs, no buts. We will stop immigration and all the rest of it. 330,000 more immigrants than the year before into the UK. But then this all gets conflated with what's going on at Calais. It gets conflated with what's going on, of course, all over the world at the moment, whether it's the USA, people coming from sort of war zones or unlivable areas like, you know, El Salvador, going through Mexico, and from Mexico again to get away from the cartels and all the rest of it into the USA to make a decent living over here. And let's face it, you can call them migrants, immigrants, but in reality, most of them are asylum seekers, and they're certainly refugees. A lot from Afghanistan, again, a war zone, a place which is like, you know, deprived of anything. You know, it's you know, the standard of living there is next to nothing. They're coming in from Syria to get away from barrel bombs, to get away from ISIS, to get away from Assad's fascist government, you know, and the kind of genocide that's going on there. They're coming in from Eritrea, the Horn of Africa, Eritrea, Somalia, Ethiopia. It's been constant war in that area since the early 70s, and it's been caused by, again, you know, the Cold War, the Americans, the Russians, all the rest of it, and so it continues. Now, the reality is we can't stop it. The world doesn't have any borders. If you go throughout history, it's always what's going on elsewhere that's caused mass movements of people. Not invasions per se, but mass movements of people. The Anglo-Saxons and the Jutes, when they first came here to the UK, or Britain as it then was, Roman Britain, that was to get away from the Goths or the Huns and the Vandals and all these other tribes from the east who were all knocked like a domino effect, knocking everyone on. The Huns were laying waste to kind of the Eastern Roman Empire, and they were knocking all the tribes in those areas into the Roman Empire, like the Goths and everyone else, and so people ended up here. The Franks, who were German, ended up in France, gave the country its name. So what's happening now is that this is nobody's dealing with it. I mean, even the other week, if you talk about Calais, what happened? Theresa May turned up, you know, pulled on a sort of concerned face like that and pointed at a few people on CCTV wandering around Calais, you know, a few migrants or refugees there, and that was it. It's all for show. And then the reality is, with our parties, certainly the Conservative Party, there's nobody likes cheap labour more than them. Oh, lots of people willing to be on 0-hour contracts and work for a minimum wage. That's great for business. Let's get them in. Now, the reality is, as a country, we're not cut off from the world. And if you think about the wars in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan and Libya, we've helped cause those. We've been involved in those. So, you know, you're not going to expect people to stick around if there's a war. If there was a war here, loads of us, we'd all be flooding to Ireland, wouldn't we? Or we'd be going to Canada, or we'd be going to Australia. Or if you had a much better standard of living somewhere else, you'd be heading to those places. So you can't demonise the people just for wanting more, and you can't create borders and barriers. History tells us that. You know, so what the solution is, we don't know. Perhaps it's a fairer world. Perhaps it's a world where it doesn't look like 83% of the wealth in the world is going to end up being owned by 1% of the world's population. Because let's face it, it's the rich who cause wars. It's the rich who like wars. It's the rich who benefit from wars, and it's the poor who suffer. Otherwise, there wouldn't be wars. So it's strange that you've got countries like Germany who weren't involved in the Gulf War and weren't involved in Afghanistan directly, and they're kind of saying, well, we're going to take this many asylum seekers from Syria and elsewhere. The Swedes, they're taking a lot of people from Syria, you know, sometimes to the detriment of their own societies there. What I did find interesting, though, was the Czech Republic, who've already come out and said, we'll only take Christians, we won't take Muslims. So the Czech Republic wouldn't have Mo Farah, but they'd gladly accept Peter Sutcliffe.